Good evening, everybody, and you're very welcome to this evening's Winning Wellbeing webinar. I think there's a dad joke warning here in that I'm going to say I really hope that you enjoy the Winning Wellbeing webinar. That's the last one and the only joke that you'll hear today from me. By way of introduction, my name's Conor Walker. I'm the head of post-primary publishing with Folens, and together with Siobhan, I would have worked with her on the publication of our new Winning Wellbeing book. And the reason that we produced that is for two reasons, I suppose. First, to help address the requirement now that there is for the 400 hours of wellbeing at Junior Cycle. So this book provides resources for you, particularly those schools who are looking or have already created wellbeing classes. This is a resource that you can use to ensure that those classes are engaging and you get the best from them. But also, I suppose, there is an increasing requirement, there's a responsibility that as parents, teachers across the board, that we have for developing students' wellbeing in general. And so this book has been designed in such a way that in an engaging way through experiential learning that we can achieve that. So before I move on, I'd like to thank everybody for joining this evening. I know it's a really busy time for teachers at the moment with you coming back to school, probably only 2 weeks in at this stage. So the fact that you've taken time out of your evening just to join us this evening is much appreciated. So thanks very much for that. A little bit of housekeeping. Just as I go through this, you'll see some sample pages from the book, and Siobhan will talk a little bit about the book before then delving into the discussion around teacher wellbeing. So if you have any interest in taking a deeper dive into Winning Wellbeing and finding out a little bit more about it, there's information available online on folens.ie. I think if you just go to folens.ie and search for Winning Wellbeing, you'll find lots of sample resources there. Also, just by way of housekeeping, there's two things I'd like to mention. First of all, there's a survey at the end of this webinar. So if you wouldn't mind just holding on until the end, it won't take any more, the webinar itself, than 40 minutes. So if you could hang on until the end of the webinar to answer the survey, that'd be fantastic. And also, if you would like to post any questions for the Q&A at the end of the webinar, there's a button that you should see at the bottom of your screen. If you click that, I think it's like a question mark or a Q&A button. If you click that and post your questions, we'll make sure to get to as many as we possibly can by the end of the webinar. So before I hand you over to Siobhan, this is our running order. So Siobhan will step through some pages of the Winning Wellbeing book and talk a little bit about Junior Cycle Wellbeing. Then the second part of her presentation will be importantly all about teacher wellbeing and her views, her opinions on that, and some tips and suggestions about minding your own wellbeing, I guess, over the coming year, which no doubt will be very busy. I'll also have a bit of info after that then on some special offers that we have for the program if you adopt the book early. And then we'll have a couple of minutes at the end for Q&A to get through as many questions that we get during the presentation. So that's it. I'm just about to hand you over to Siobhan now, but just by way, again, of introduction to Siobhan. Siobhan teaches at the Ursuline in Thurles. She is a very experienced teacher who manages learning support in her school, SPHE, art, and is highly qualified in the area of well-being, education, meditation, and mindfulness. I've forgotten anything, so it'll be something I forget. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Siobhan now. So hopefully, Siobhan, you should be able to see control going your way, and you can take the lead from here. Thanks.
Thanks a million. Can you hear me, guys? Conor?
I can.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you, Conor, for the lovely introduction, and thank you all so much for joining tonight. I know how busy everybody is, so I promise I will try to be as brief as possible. So as Conor said, my name is Siobhán Hackett, and I'm a teacher in the Ursuline Secondary School in Thurles. And it has been a dream of mine for a long time to write a book for students that will really, rather than trying to fix and save them, that will really try to empower and equip them with life skills going forward that they can bring into adult life. And there, as another part of it for us when we were doing the book was teacher wellbeing. So often teachers are teased about having their long holidays, but the reality is when we're in school, we're so time poor and it's so hard to find time to do it all. So the book is set up in such a way, so if you're tearing from a 6th year biology class down to a 1st year wellbeing class, it's so hard to find time to photocopy, to create resources, to find resources that are suitable for the classroom. So hopefully Winning Wellbeing is going to do all of that for you, and that you literally will be able to walk in, not have to read a teacher guide on how to do it all, and that it's a very, very simple and straightforward book. Sorry, I beg your pardon. And that you literally will be able to follow it step by step, so that the teacher is more of a facilitator than, you know what I mean, than having to literally control all of it. So as we know, the hours have moved, as Conor said, to 400 for 1st years from this September. And when we started off this whole process, we sent out a survey to an awful lot of schools to see, was there a need for a book? Did people feel there was a need for a book that was going to instill life and wellbeing skills in students? And it came back with very much a resounding yes, that teachers really felt there was a need. And we're aware that schools are doing amazing things out there for wellbeing. But for schools that are hoping to establish a wellbeing class, or that have already established a wellbeing class, hopefully, you know, the body of resources that we have put together will really make a difference. You know, the NCCA describe wellbeing as healthy, happy, connected and confident young people. And we wanted Winning Wellbeing to try and achieve this. So there's an awful lot of a variety of activities in it. So there's cognitive behavioral therapy exercises in it. There's self-esteem elevation exercises. There's role play. There's lots of different games, because I suppose it's built around the whole Chinese proverb of the thing of tell me I'll forget, show me I'll remember, involve me and I'll understand. So hopefully by involving the students and letting it be a lot more fun and experiential for them, the lesson and the message will stay with them, you know, so much longer into the future. So the whole book is designed around the indicators of well-being, which are active, responsible, connected, resilient, respected, and aware. And hopefully the topics and everything that we've covered in it are very fresh and current and relatable. And for us, it was very important that we connected with the students as we were going through the book. So we asked for their advice, we asked for who they found inspirational, we asked them, ran activities by them to see, you know, did they think that it was going to be work, or, you know, what they felt was relevant. And we were also very aware of, you know, making sure that it supported teachers of all experience levels, so that people didn't feel, oh my God, I haven't even taught an SPHE class, how am I going to teach a wellbeing class? So that the book is aimed that, you know, literally it is so simple in its nature. And I'll take you on a walk through the book there now in a while, and you can see how simply it's laid out. So as you can see here, the table of contents is, you know, that's literally what you'll see when you open the first page. And the wellbeing indicators are highlighted here. So you can see there, say, you know, under overcoming obstacles, grief and loss, feeling grateful, unhealthy relationships, forgiveness, learning from failure. So the topics, you know, while some of them might slightly overlap by their very nature, CSP and SPHE, I suppose we all come in, and wellbeing all come in under the wellbeing umbrella. But that our hope is that it's going to be an awful lot of life skills are going to be taught to the students. So, you know, there's a chapter on anger management, on conflict resolution, saying sorry, becoming assertive, effective communication, and, you know, building in things like the importance of eye contact. All of those things would hopefully be very, very clear. So as you can see here now, this is the start of the book. It starts off and it's just very clear at the beginning what the lesson goals are. So what you will learn from this lesson and what you remember from this lesson. And then we have a short story which will hopefully set the scene for what the lesson is going to be about. And it leads on then to the big question. And the big question is kind of just giving them a question to pose in their minds for starting off about what the lesson is really going to be about. It then goes on to shine a light feature, and the shine a light feature is it profiles famous people that have overcome obstacles and have overcome adversity in their own life, and how we can learn from them and the lessons that we can learn from them. It then goes on, there's a suggestion box, and the suggestion box is something that can be done outside of class, or it's something that can be as a follow-on, because obviously some schools have a 40-minute period and some schools have an hour-long class. So we have enough activities in it that it will suit both, and nobody knows their own students like the teacher. So you'll be aware as we move on here whether activity 1 or activity 2 suit your class, or whether both suit your class, or what time frame it allows. And also, you know, some of the activities might have 4 little activities. It just depends on each lesson, they vary. And then at the very, very end, the Junior Cycle speaks about the importance of self-reflection for students. So at the end of each lesson, then there's a question for them, and it says, one important thing I learned from this lesson, and how can I bring what I learned from this lesson into my own life? And hopefully that, that only comes with practice, that skill, for them to hopefully be able to build on their self-reflection skills. So I suppose the question is, how will this book make my life easier as a teacher in the classroom? So hopefully by feeling empowered by the straightforward, simple nature of the book. I often think it's very hard to feel empowered as a teacher and to empower students if we don't feel empowered ourselves. So hopefully, the achievable and flexible nature of the book is going to allow that as well. So there's 28 lessons in the book, and we're aware that there's 33 teaching weeks, but say with, if there's a school assembly or whatever, or some of the lessons might run in longer than one class, they generally should be achieved in one class, but just, by its very nature, every class is different. You'll be able to decide, then you have that flexibility to try and get the 28 lessons covered. As Connor said as well, that they're very experiential, very hands-on learning. It's fun, it's interactive for the students, so hopefully that they will be very involved and engaged in the whole process. As I said, there's a variety of exercises between CBT, mindfulness, meditation. All of that is built in through, depending on the nature of the lesson, what is brought into it. The book is aimed, I suppose, for first years, but we sent it out to lots of different teachers, and the feedback that's been coming back is that it's also very suited to second and third year. So I suppose it just depends, hopefully if we go on to do book 2 and 3, the chapters will be interchangeable. So if somebody decided to do a book, this book with their second years, then hopefully the next book would relate when they went on into third year, or if they wanted to take it up with their first years the following year. Just to mention as well that there are additional resources. So there are little videos that tie in with each lesson. If you wanted to further extend the lessons, the list of those on the Folan's Hive. There's also additional PowerPoints and other printable worksheets if teachers felt there was a need for additional resources. But the reality is everything should be within the cover of the 2 covers of the book, so that, if Wi-Fi went down or whatever, even though there is an ebook, everything is there for you. You're not tearing to try and gather resources and trying, I need to get balloons for that lesson or any of that. All of the lessons are hopefully resource free. I think there's only one where you need to have sellotape or something like that. But other than that, it should be that they're resource free and that the teacher's well-being will be in a much better space because of it. So I suppose building on well-being skills in our young people is just so important, because it builds their inner confidence and it fosters positive thinking. Because when young people start to understand that there's a huge connection and a huge interaction between our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviours, they really can start to work on developing coping strategies. When they start, there's chapters on, say, as I said, anger management and conflict resolution, when they can really start to build on these skills and start, believing in their capacity to overcome adversity. All these small changes can make a huge, difference in helping them to flourish and to move forward. And I often use the analogy of the heart monitor, and we would all love this beautiful, smooth life that is A to B. But the reality is, if we're A to B with a smooth line, unfortunately, we flatlined. And the reality is, unfortunately, in life, there are ups and downs, and we have to learn to be resilient and to deal with these ups and downs. And hopefully that's what Winning Wellbeing is going to do. It's going to teach our young people a set of life skills, a set of well-being skills that they can really bring forward with them so that they can flourish in life moving forward. And also, hopefully, they'll really build on their self-esteem skills. I often think of this quote, I suppose, being a learning support coordinator as well, that everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. So we want all of our young people to come away with a sense of self-belief, because we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, and it's, I suppose, if we can build on our strengths and believe in ourselves. It's been proven that well-being is synergistic with improved learning. And hopefully by, moving forward and believing in yourself, it will have a knock-on effect that will hopefully really, really benefit our young people. But I suppose as important as our student well-being is teacher well-being. And we often think, we prioritize our students so often. And teacher well-being, we cannot pour from an empty cup. If we're absolutely worn out, it's impossible to give of ourselves to young people. And I just want to make a point saying I don't have all my ducks in a row, and I really want to make that clear. Because I don't have all my ducks in a row, I have to practice all these strategies in my own life as well. Here in our school at the moment, we are going to be doing the musical The Lion King. So there are over 300 in the class, so there's an awful lot of masks and headdresses to be made, and there are times I get overwhelmed by it all as well, and I have to practice all of these strategies when it comes to it as well. So it's, I suppose, what has been proven effective over the years and what different people have said is that, you know, first of all, to recognize what are some of the main causes of teacher stress, and teacher stress can be different for all of us. But I suppose for many, they'd say it's the increase in workload in the administration. The lack of time is also, as we talked about, teachers are often so time poor, can be a real issue as well. And then I suppose the rise in parent and teacher demand and the expectations that comes with that can prove to be, you know, difficult for people. Oftentimes people also say with wellbeing, SPHE subjects like that, they often feel conscripted into teaching these subjects and they don't feel qualified to deal with it. So hopefully Winning Wellbeing is going to lower that stress, that it's going to be a step-by-step process that's going to make it an awful lot easier to work through it all. And I suppose then it's to ask ourselves, what is wellbeing? So wellbeing is going to have a different meaning for every single one of us. But Healthy Ireland Initiative describe it as wellbeing is an integral part of the definition of health. It reflects the quality of life and the various factors which can influence a person's life. So I suppose really, if you know, it can mean so many different things, but it's feeling strong in our bodies and our minds. It's knowing that our best is always enough. And I think we can often be very guilty of that as teachers. We drive ourselves. We constantly feel we should be doing more. And it's getting to a stage where we accept that a good enough is, you know, versus a perfection mindset is okay. You know, all we can do is our best. And we tell the students this all the time, but it's so, so important to remind ourselves of it as well. Like we talked about the heart monitor, it's so important to accept that life comes with disappointments. And, you know, we often are guilty of finding the biggest stick we possibly can to beat ourselves up with when we make mistakes. We have to learn to forgive ourselves, to move forward. And also, I suppose, to take time to be grateful. For me, that's a huge part of my well-being practice. You know, as I'm driving to school each day and I'm dropping the kids off, we all say 3 things we're grateful for. So it can be something as simple as, let's say it's pouring outside, or we're so grateful that we have a car that we're not getting drowned. Or if somebody doesn't have a car, it could be that I'm so grateful for an umbrella that I'm not getting wet, or a raincoat that I'm not getting wet. It can be something really, really simple. So rather than listing off a rota of things all the time, something that's really, really relevant to that day. And it really can just tune our brains into a different frequency. So rather than just constantly focusing on the negative and constantly thinking that faraway hills are always greener, it can really make a difference if we can try to actually tune our minds into that little bit of positivity. And I suppose accepting that as teachers that we're going to fail, you know, failure is a part of life. And oftentimes, I suppose, we're trying to teach our students that it's an opportunity to learn and to move forward, but also to practice that in our own life and forgive ourselves when we get mad or whatever the case may be, and start again and move forward and try to do the best that we possibly can. For me, another thing that really, really works is, you know, we all have to-do lists coming out our years, and it's just a case of, rather than just having one never-ending to-do list, it's to try and lose the urgency in life and create, you know, subdivide our lists. So whether that list is what has to be achieved today, and the second list then can be something that, you know, has to be done over the next week or whatever the case may be. And there's the added satisfaction then of being able to cross out things off our lists as we move forward. The importance of looking after our body and mind, obviously, which is of huge importance, and allowing ourselves that, you know, not saying, you know, I feel guilty for prioritizing me time, because, you know, like we said, you can't pour from an empty cup. And oftentimes it's like the science experiment that was done years ago, the grandfather clock, and then other clocks were put in the room, and everyone moved to the grandfather clock's time. So if we're out of sync and we're not feeling well at the top of the class, it's very hard to try and empower our young people and make them feel, you know what I mean, that they can cope with anything when we're feeling overwhelmed ourselves. So making that time for ourselves. I think also another really, really important thing is allowing people to help us. Accepting that, you know, we don't have, you know, we can't do it all, and being willing to ask for help and say, look, I'm just not able to find time to do X, Y, and Z. And I know even say in our department, we share, you know, and collaborate an awful lot of the work. So for example, you know, if a new courses after coming out, we would say, okay, well, you do this section, there's 3 of us in the department, and we divide up the different sections, and then we have a shared teacher data that all of the staff are part of, and we all can share our resources, which can also be really, really handy for newly qualified teachers coming in, or if you were going out on sick leave, that somebody would just automatically have all your resources and somewhere that they're able to find them. Also accepting that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are amazing resources out there, and that hopefully Winning Wellbeing will be one of those resources that might make your life a little bit easier. That, you know, not feeling we have to do it all ourselves, you know, finding time, finding balance to make sure that we are able to balance our life outside the school as well, because it's so easy to make school the be all and end all. And I suppose sometimes by its very nature, there can be conflict in teaching, whether that's with a student or whether it's with a parent or whatever the case may be. So in the book, there are lessons on conflict resolution, effective communication, and on being assertive. And I suppose we often have to try and practice that ourselves in our own life, you know, so that if we're having a conversation, to try and allow it to be a solution-focused conversation, not to let our own blood pressure go through the roof over something, and to constantly to remind ourselves that we never know what's going on in anybody's life, the same way as nobody knows what's going on in our life, I suppose. The reality is that, you know, we have to try and understand things and be humble enough to try and see things from other people's perspective and see where they're coming at it. Another thing we're all very, very guilty of, I know I'm very guilty of it at times, is negative self-talk and beating up on ourselves. And the truth is our bodies are always listening. So it's so, so important to try and speak to ourselves in a nice way. So if a friend was to come to us with a problem, we're not going to berate them and give out to them for the issue. You're going to say to them, look, this is okay, we can get through this, you know, and we need to learn to speak to ourselves in the same way with positive self-talk and building affirmations into our day. So affirmations, there's another lesson on that. Affirmations, you know, really can make a difference. You know, I even pin them up on my own mirror at home when I'm washing my teeth, and I'll read them. Because again, I'm trying to program my mind to start off on a much more positive note of the day. So that you literally everything, you are more upbeat, you are more confident about things as you go about your day. And it has been proven that negative emotions induce stress and that positive emotions help to fight it. So it's not that we suddenly become well. I mean, I grew up in a home with mental health issues. So I suppose I've always been very interested in the whole area of well-being and being well. And it's not something just you can suddenly, you know, these are things we have to learn to practice and build into our own lives. And that really can make a difference. So, you know, when life gives you lemons, you do learn to make lemonade out of it. And, you know, it's implementing little strategies and steps, which we're trying to teach the kids as well, and it ourselves how to do. And whether that is, say, there's a lesson on the book, there's a good few meditations actually and exercises throughout the book that are actually recorded on Folan's Hive for people to listen to. But by practicing box breathing and progressive muscle relaxation, it can be done anywhere. And it can make such a difference. It's like a snow globe. If you think of a snow globe, and you know the snow globe when it's shook up and everything is in spiral and everything is so hard, and by letting everything settle and giving ourselves a chance to box breathe and letting our body, you know, come back to normal, it really can make a difference, because we can see through, you know, through the storm and see kind of a way forward. And you know, by taking proactive steps to deal with our stresses and our anxieties, it really can make a difference. And laughter is a trainable skill. So whether that is for you, and I suppose it's proven scientifically that it does release endorphins into our body, which are the natural painkillers. And I suppose whether that for you is watching a funny YouTube video, or Faulty Towers, or Friends, or whatever the case may be, just to try and bring a little bit of laughter into our day can make such a difference. Obviously, we all know the importance of drinking water. Our bodies are made up of a huge percentage of water. So not drinking, by allowing yourselves to get dehydrated and not drinking enough water, it really can cause a huge imbalance in both body and mind. So just to try and keep our water up. The importance of eating a healthy diet obviously plays a huge part in our well-being as well, and finding a little bit of time for self-care. And self-care has a different meaning for every single one of us. For some people, it's meeting up with friends. For others, it's finding time for hobbies. For others, it's being on a sideline and chatting with people, you know, whether it's a hot bath or finding time to go for a massage or have a facial or whatever the case may be for you. It's not allowing ourselves to feel guilty for finding that little bit of me time in the day, because you know, that little bit of me time allows us kind of to switch off for a little while. And I suppose with mindfulness, the whole thing with mindfulness is, I mean, I'm a disaster with technology, and so often it's a thing of, you know, switching it on and switching it back off again, you know, off and turning it back on again, sorry, to make it work. And the reality is we are the very, very same. We have to allow ourselves a little bit of time in the day to switch off, and then we can switch back on again. Because by whether that is taking a sip of water and mindfully paying attention as we do it, whether it's just taking time to stand and stare out the window or appreciate the color and the scenery that's all around us, you know, giving yourself permission to switch off really can make such a difference. So listen, guys, thank you so much for your time. I'm very happy to take any questions, and I'm going to hand you back over to Conor. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Siobhan, so much. That was
Thanks.
fantastic. Before we go to the Q&A, I'm just going to go through just a couple of pieces of information in case you've interest in the special offer. I suppose if you've taken a look at what Siobhan has kind of demoed there, and you have an interest and you'd like to maybe investigate it further, learn a little bit more about it, you can obviously contact your local Fowlands rep. But just to make you aware that we do have a 40% discount for a full set of first year books if you order them directly through your rep. The current retail price of the book is $14.95, but the discounted price is at the nice round figure of $8.97. So if that's of interest to you, if that's an incentive maybe to get in touch with your rep, please do that. And then also then just a bit of info then in relation to the rep, then they, you know, every area in Ireland has its own representative, and they're available for calls or appointments at any time that would suit you. They provide support and information around book rental schemes, and a direct mail actually of the sample of the book is going to be sent to your school's deputy principal over the coming weeks. Again, I mentioned the survey at the end of the webinar. If you'd like to stay on to answer that, you have then the option, if you express interest in speaking to a rep or meeting a rep, they can bring a copy with them as well to you whenever that appointment is. And as I said earlier, much of the book and the digital resources that we've created for Winning Wellbeing are available on fowlands.ie if you'd like to take a closer look at them. And of course, you can find your rep on fowlands.ie. Just again, as I said, if you go to the website, and I think there's a find your rep option, or if you enter that in the keyword search, you'll very quickly be able to enter your roll number and find out who your rep is and get their contact details. So Q&A. Now, Siobhan, there's quite a few questions that have come in, and as I've been keeping an eye on them as they've been coming through. So I'm going to try and maybe start with maybe the higher level stuff, and then we can work our way down to maybe more of the specifics as best I can anyway. Okay, so can you hear me okay? Just to make sure.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Marianne.
Right, so nice easy one for you to begin with. How can I start to implement an effective well-being program on a whole school level?
Okay. So I suppose it's the importance, really. I suppose the whole school community are on a journey with well-being. So it's so important that everybody is very involved in the whole process, really. So it's coming up really with a dedicated team first. And I know in our school we have a wonderful well-being coordinator who kind of, you know, coordinates everything that's happening. But then there's a pastoral leadership team who'd be very involved with helping her to make decisions and how to move forward with different things and running things by us and just, you know, listening ear sometimes. And then I suppose it's just start as a school and kind of say, you know, like do a little bit of a school self-evaluation of, you know, where are our strengths? How can we improve? What could we do differently? And then following on from that, to put a well-being policy in place at that stage. It's also really, really important that there would be a program, hopefully Winning Wellbeing or something like that, you know, that you feel that there is a program that could be used, you know, or you might have a really good body of resources built up already. And then obviously timetabling, which is so important, that there is time on the timetable for it to happen. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, that's great. And I suppose every school is different as well, so there has to be a level of flexibility, adaptability to what you set up and the requirements or needs of your own young people in the school, right?
Completely, because with timetabling, everybody will have a different plan of how they're going to work out their hours. So yeah, very much so.
Okay, there's a few specifics actually that I can see here, just in relation to the book itself. You mentioned, I know earlier on, I suppose well-being is a very broad spanning area, and every subject within that learning area itself, there's an intersection. Like if there was a Venn diagram, those circles would definitely be overlaying each other in lots of different ways. But there is a couple of questions specifically just to do with clarifying maybe how the book differs from an SPHE book, because there is probably some overlap with that in the same way that there would be with CSPE as well, I suppose.
Yeah, no, by its very nature, I think well-being is going to overlap slightly with SPHE and CSP, and vice versa, and that's perfectly okay, because all of it is focused around building on their well-being, as is PE building on their active side of their well-being. But I suppose what the NCCA have really put emphasis on with the well-being is that it's life skills and strategies and personal growth is going to be a really, really important part, and teaching students how to maintain their own well-being so that they can bring those skills forward. So rather than it being kind of, I suppose, just knowledge, it's actually a skill set that they can actually apply to life, is what the NCCA have really requested when it comes to well-being.
Great, thanks for that. Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to read through things here. So then there's another one that says, asks, do you have any general guidance on how to handle the more tricky subjects or to avoid situations where you might trigger students who might be going through tough times or issues you mightn't be aware of?
Yeah, and I think it's so important, and that's the way we've designed the whole Winning Wellbeing book. And any wellbeing program should follow this really. It should be a universal preventative program, okay? Because at no stage should any of the lessons lead to it being a therapeutic session, because if you're not a counsellor going into the classroom, you most definitely shouldn't become one in the middle of a class. And if there is a specific, so a lot of the lessons have been done in such a way that it's not going to make teachers uncomfortable, that they are learning these important life skills, but that it's not leaving scope for it to turn into a therapy session. And I suppose just to say, if there is a specific issue that would need to be dealt with, it's so important that that is dealt with in a safe space. And the classroom is not a safe space really for everybody knowing your business. And that's where I suppose if the child had an issue, to encourage them that they could talk to you after class, and then you can redirect them in the right way, so that at no stage is the teacher being put in an awkward position either. Because that wouldn't be fair, because yes, the topics that can be dealt with in well-being sometimes can be of a delicate nature, but that's why the book has been set up in such a way that it is going to be a preventative program as opposed to a therapeutic session.
Okay, there's a question here from one of our people on the webinar just asking, are there any plans for a book for Senior Cycle? So I suppose the focus initially was on the Junior Cycle Wellbeing and supporting that. Clearly, young people from first year all the way up to sixth year, would benefit from something like what Siobhan has created. So we'll certainly be looking at that over the next couple of years.
I think, Conor, when we sent it out as well, remember, for teachers to review, I know one of the teachers came back saying she felt she was going to use it with her LCA students. Actually, she felt it was very, very relevant for her. And I know here our own wellbeing teacher, here in TY, who does a wellbeing program, has decided that she's going to implement it with her TYs as well. So look, I suppose it depends, but hopefully a lot of the skills are relevant to a lot of students.
Yeah, and I think that it's pitched in such a way that a lot of the content of the topics that we're talking about here, while it's more focused on Junior Cycle, there's probably benefits that older students would gain from. So as you say, LCA students or TY and possibly Leaving Cert. Okay. I was actually wondering this myself. If it's not too late, how do you do your mindfulness in the classroom? I love it personally, but not 100% on how to do it in the classroom. So I guess there's a sort of a classroom management piece there, Siobhan, that you might be able to give a little bit of advice on.
Sorry, is it that how I practice mindfulness in my classroom? Is that the question?
Yeah, exactly. Just
for myself, is it?
Yeah, so sorry, I'll read the question again. If it's how do you do your mindfulness in the classroom? I love it personally, but I'm not 100% on how to do it in the classroom. So I suppose, is there some guidance on how to teach mindfulness and meditation within your classroom?
Yeah, and that we would have that built in, I suppose, for ourselves. So I'm still not really sure. I'm going to answer it from both perspectives. So for myself, I suppose, if I'm having a day and I'm spiraling a little bit, it's just to kind of allow myself time to breathe. You know what I mean? And literally that can be done while in the classroom, or if I'm taking a sip of water, to just be mindful of when I'm doing it, you know, to try and bring even small little practices. I know in our school at the beginning we say a prayer. So it's just to be mindful of, you know, little small things, be aware of what we're doing rather than being in that whirlwind all the time. And then in regards practicing it with students, it is literally bringing it in. So I suppose to every little thing that they're doing. And in the lesson, in one of the lessons, we have a relaxation chapter, and then I suppose we've different mindfulness activities dotted throughout the book. So it might be that there's mindful coloring. There's another mindful exercise actually for anger under the anger section, and it's called the Soles of the Feet meditation. And they're all recorded on Folan's Hive, and it talks you through all the stages and the lead up to it as well on the recording.
Okay. Yeah, that could be really useful to have that audio to listen to. I think kind of acts as a good prompt for the classroom. This is just, I guess, and again, this goes back to the fact that, like, in addition to maybe having a wellbeing class, there are other initiatives, one-off initiatives and type of things that schools might do. So this question reads, we run some wellbeing days or themes throughout the year, Funky Feet, Heart Week, RE Valentine's. I'm not sure what that means. Any more ideas that your school may have? I suppose, like, in terms of initiatives, one-offs, maybe not necessarily a timetable class, but if there are events or things that you might encourage the students to get involved in to help fulfill that requirement for time. Do you have any ideas, or what would you do in your own school? I know you mentioned The Lion King, which, by the way, sounds pretty impressive, and I wouldn't be surprised if Elton John turns up performing. Is there anything else in your school that you would do, maybe just to give some ideas to teachers on wellbeing initiatives?
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose at one stage we have an Amber Flag committee here, and Rebecca, one of the girls who runs it, is just incredible, and she's always coming up with lots of beautiful ideas around the school. But say, even I know at another stage, students would have, you know, little post-it notes, and they'd write, you know, little notes, and they stuck them on, say, we're a school of over 800 students, and they wrote a little positive note on each other's locker, so everybody got a positivity note. Or at other stages, you know, during LGBTQ week, they would, you know, put up little positive quotes around the place, or even just pinning them to the mirrors, and people could take them with them or stuff like that. You know, painting stones is another thing, and you leave these positive little kindness stones with little messages, and just put a little bit of PVA glue on the top of them, so that they can be left around in different places for people to find. You know, or kind of, I suppose, they can, within the classroom, encouraging, you know, I suppose it doesn't have to be within a wellbeing class, the whole thing of the knock-on kindness, the ripple effect of kindness. So one good deed deserves another, and that they document them and they keep an eye on them. Another thing that we do, I won't keep talking now, I'll shut up in a second, is, I suppose, sending out to old folks' home, is writing the letters at Christmas, which can be a really, really nice touch. You know, and oftentimes they'll write back to the class and stuff like that. So that can be a nice little thing to do as well.
Great. Just, I know we're getting close to the time now, but I'm one or two more. Just any suggestions, well, other than yourself, obviously, any suggestions for guest speakers to visit with regards to well-being, and to make it more than just a lesson? Sometimes we feel the students take more from outsiders than teachers. And I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be a personality as such, but even figures in the community, or you can maybe speak generically to that as to what maybe you would do if you ever bring people from outside in.
Yeah, and in fairness, there's incredible speakers here in Ireland. I know Pat Dively, obviously, you know, has started to work a bit with young people, and he's a great guy. Brezzy is very, very involved with young people, and he has done, you know, he has loads of lovely kind of podcasts and stuff like that that are very, very relevant, and just very inspirational for our own lives. And Pat does podcasts as well, which can be great. But there are numerous people. We've had different speakers in over the years, and for some reason I can't even think of names, but they, you know, I suppose it depends on what you're trying to do. Like, we've had Maureen Griffin in to talk about, obviously, the importance of online safety and things like that. But that's coming at it, that's not really coming at it from an inspirational point of view. But definitely Pat and Brezzy, and I'm so sorry I'm blanking on names now, are definitely very, very good when it comes to young people.
Yeah, and I know that phones, we within the company itself, and we've had a number of wellbeing initiatives where we've had people come in who might be suitable to schools as well. We'll be quite strong on that side of things. So whoever posted that question, perhaps if they wanted to get in touch with their rep, not necessarily in connection with the book, but if they just wanted some guidance or some ideas, I think the folks at Folan's could maybe make some suggestions or put them in contact with people who might be options for them in their school. Right, the last question then, I guess, before we wrap up. Rather than delving into the specifics, because it's in relation to science and maybe the requirements for the timetabling, I think the question is more just to do with the balance of the timetabling of well-being over the 3 years. Does it necessarily have to be X amount in year 1, X amount in year 2 or 3, or is there a general flexibility as far as you understand it in how it's distributed or timetabled across the different years? You might, I suppose, taper it off a little bit when you're moving into high stakes or kind of junior cycle exam year, but what would your answer to that be?
So yeah, I suppose there's, even on the guidelines, there seems to be an awful, they make suggestions. Every school is unique and every school will do it differently, but that they're, obviously will say that PE is going to take a little bit more of the time, and then say PE and SPHE then after that play a huge part in the hours, which leaves about 65 hours left over for what they're saying, is going to be for well-being. So let's say 135 are for PE, 70 are for SPHE, 70 are for CSB, and that leaves 65 hours left to play with. Or other people then would say, obviously, you have the 240 hours go for English, Irish, and maths, and 200 hours go for the other 7 subjects, say. And then, so that comes to 2,120 hours, I think it was. And then another 400 brings it to 2,520, which left over, that was including the 4 hours of wellbeing, which still left 285 hours for people to play around with. So there's huge flexibility in there for what schools can do. But I suppose it's, again, as we said, it has to be a whole school journey. Management have to be on board and trying to come to an agreement on what's going to work best for our school.
Okay, great. And with that, we're at 7:15. I know Bake Off, the new season begins in 15 minutes, and people are probably looking to get to that. Listen, Siobhan, thanks so much. That was so informative.
Thank you so much.
It's always great to have such a great experience with you on this book, and to listen to what you've had to say today about not only the book, but about just general well-being. And there's lots that certainly I've taken from that, if not just the teachers who've attended this. So I think that's it, really. Just again, to everybody out there who attended, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Lots of really positive comments coming back through the messages as well. Thanking you, Siobhan, and really loving the book, and just thanking you for the presentation and all that you've done in the area of wellbeing. And so there are probably people who know you too. But that's it. So listen, everyone, thanks once again, and we leave it at that and have a lovely evening.
Thanks so much, everyone.